more of our favorite non-tech podcasts. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by our Patreon patrons. Help support MacVoices and gain access to the MacVoices Slack and MacVoices After Dark at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, the MacVoices Live panel wraps up their look at some of our favorite non-tech podcasts. If you have ideas for favorite non-tech podcasts, we'd love to hear from you. Until then, let's go back and let the panel do the talking.
Jim Ray, how about you?
Well, the answer I would have given about 3 months ago would have been different because probably my top non-tech podcast stopped. That was called All the President's Lawyers.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Oh, it was great. It was by the local public radio station, KCRW. And, they covered all the shenanigans involving, various legal cases that you can imagine. And it was really smart coverage. I would just mostly wait and see what they had to say instead of anything else. But they are not doing it anymore. They say, don't unsubscribe. They might do something, but so far nothing. So I'm going to recommend Food Safety Talk by Don Schaffner and Ben Schaffner. I assume that most of you eat, and
in abundance.
So this was something I started listening to towards the beginning of the pandemic because I had seen some interesting stuff on Twitter from one of the people, and I wound up being pretty fascinated by it, which kind of surprised me. So, and although sometimes that podcast does devolve into a tech podcast because it's two professors, one from Rutgers and one from NC State. They're food science, safety people, and they both use Mac. So like one time after WWDC, I started listening and it was like, oh, they spent a half an hour talking about WWDC, but usually not. And they, but it's really fun. It's not sponsored. They're there's no ads or anything. It's just something that they do, and they clearly love it, the topic, and they've really made me interested in it. They also, now that's usually a couple times a month, and it's a couple of hours. So they also have one called Risky or Not, which is usually about 10 minutes. And so, you might find that more approachable, and they'll take one topic, they'll take some question and debate whether that is risky or not. So that's pretty interesting too. Has a great song. Also, real quick, I'm a cycle racing fan, so I listen to Cycling Tips, and also Lance Armstrong has a podcast, which I'm The Move. So especially during racing season, I listen to a lot of cycling. In fact, during the Tour de France, they're both daily, so get a ton of cycling content.
Cool.
Very interesting. It's fascinating to me how many, I guess, call them celebrities for lack of a better word, have a podcast of their own that comes right out of left field. And that, you would, so they have a podcast, you would think they're going to be talking about A, B, and C, and instead they're talking about X, Y, and Z. It's fascinating just because you feel like the real people come out in these as opposed to what you think they are or the roles they play on screen. And, I'm thinking of Lance Armstrong. I mean, I know that's
pretty cycling.
He's pretty cycling,
related.
But, I would never have thought of Lance Armstrong having a podcast. So that's really
it kind of surprised me, but it's kind of I discovered it during the tour about 4 years ago, pretty soon after he started, and that was the first cycling podcast that I knew, found out about, And it was pretty interesting to me because they were really going into detail. He also has one of his teammates, George Hincapie, and sometimes he has his old boss, John Brunel. And so they really get into the weeds, and it's very interesting. And, most of you probably don't know anything about cycling. It turns out there's a lot to it. There's a huge amount of strategy. And, I before I started getting into that, I just assumed it was like, well, get on a bike and go as fast as you can. And that's not how it works at all. So it's really interesting. Now, I think some people in the cycling community are sort of like, they're a little bent out of shape about it. He does have a lot of ads on it too. I think he's making a fair amount of money. Not that I'm sure he actually needs it. And then sometime later, I started listening to Cycling Tips, which is sort of the opposite. I think they're all, they work for some website, and I think they're lucky if they get one sponsor. But they seem like nice people, which I'm not sure about Lance, but Lance's podcast is really, really interesting. So, help me learn a lot more about, to enjoy watching the cycling, understand, although, I've read some books about it too and stuff. So don't get me going on. Oh, and also, Jeff mentioned YouTube channels. There's a ton of NonTech YouTube channels. So if you ever want to ask that, I have lots of recommendations. But you asked for podcasts, so.
Yeah, we may do that another night.
Another good one I listen to, though they don't update as often as they used to, is the Don and Drew show.
Oh my God,
who's
that's
that?
That was from like the beginning when Adam.
Yeah, their latest episode is like from September, I think.
Conan O'Brien also had, real quick. Conan O'Brien has needs a friend. Needs a friend, and that's really funny.
Like, let Kelly get her
Kelly
in.
to blow my mind.
Yeah, Kelly.
Let's get her in.
Kelly, I don't know what's wrong with these guys.
Blow my mind.
No respect for the,
No respect at all.
So I have a couple to recommend. And part of the reason I have a couple to recommend is because one of them doesn't come out very often. And the reason for that is because the amount of research that he does to put into anything is really interesting. So I'm going to start with that one, which is the Disney Story Origins podcast. And I'll have a link for that for Chuck to put in. And what it is, I know, like, it's exactly what it says on the tin, but here's the thing, is that all of the sort of classic Disney fairy tale movies, there are many iterations of that fairy tale, or there are many iterations of the story that they used, and so they took a piece of this and a piece of that and a little of this and some sprinkles from this one and put it all together in order to give you the movie. And so he digs really deep into, here's the story, here's the version of it from here and there and the other place, and really, really digs into it. And I find that one fascinating. And it's one that you can kind of dip in and out of because, it's, whatever the episode is, it's going to be that episode. And there's usually multiple parts on those too. So, I really like that one, which is about Disney movies. I also like Coverville, which is a music podcast. I'm a music nerd, and there's a soft spot in my heart always for an interesting cover version. And Brian Ibbett over at Coverville does a whole podcast and has done it for, I think, like 200 years now. And like, it's just been going forever. And so, if you're not interested in the Blink-182 50th birthday Mark Hoppus episode, you can scroll way back and go find one that you really like. And he's very equal opportunity. So maybe this week it's rock and roll. Maybe next week it's, like an older song, or it's a jazz thing or whatever. And so he's always got something really interesting to talk about over there. So I enjoy Coverville very much. And in what will come as a surprise to approximately no one, Brett Goldstein, who plays Roy Kent on Ted Lasso, has a show called Films to be Buried with Brett Goldstein. And it's got the best description of like any podcast. We are born, we die. In between, we watch a lot of films. Just the whole thing.
I'm in.
So he has people come talk to him about a movie that like is just part of their soul. And I like, aside from a soft spot for a cover song, I will listen to somebody talk about something they are legitimately excited about all day long, regardless of my interest in that topic. If I can listen to somebody be excited about a thing and you can hear when they're talking that their eyes light up, that's this show. And of course he's gotten, I think, a lot higher profile folks in the last couple of years, and I don't really know why. But the footnote to this is that Brett Goldstein is a weapons grade Muppet fan. And so I have adored him. I have adored him from afar for these many years. Before Ted Lasso, I knew who he was because he was this dude. And like, aside from being, a comedy writer and all of these things, because he's one of the writers on the show, like, this show is like him being excited about talking to somebody who's really excited to talk about a movie. And I love it so much. So that would be my other recommendation. That's them.
Cool.
You had me at Brett Goldstein.
Yeah. If you haven't seen his one-man reenactment of Muppet Christmas Carol,
it is so unbelievable.
Like, yeah.
I hadn't seen that one. So Kelly, thank you for whenever it was you sent that to me, because
you're welcome.
My life was incomplete without that video.
It was. And I'm here to tell you that it's like 7 minutes long, and your life will be better at the end of those 7 minutes. I assure you. I'll make sure there's a link to it for Chuck in the show notes.
Yeah, he's got 190 episodes for that show too. And
yeah, because he's been doing it for ages. And it's it's just one of those things. Like I said, people are really excited about getting to talk about a thing. So
it's in my feed now.
The movie that they love, and I appreciate that. And yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
Chuck, I have to throw another show out.
Okay.
Everything is Alive.
I like that one.
It's interviews with inanimate objects, and it is amazing.
So a lot like this show.
Yeah, but it's intelligent and interesting.
Also, not like
thank you, Jeff.
Unlike this show.
So like one of the episodes that I listened to recently, it was about it was an interview with these two Sharpie pens that are in an office, and what goes on in their lives. And they're actually married, which isn't common for Sharpies, because typically they get separated and moved around and don't get to spend time together. And, and what happens when the one lost its cap and it had a different cap on it, and it was really difficult on the relationship. And
so is this like 5-year-old telling this story? Like,
no, this is like
olds.
No, this is adults. These are adult inanimate objects. And the one for pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns, oh my God. That one is just brilliant. But all of them are incredibly fantastic. So Everything is Alive.
This could become a new feature of this show, because I think there are a lot of others out there that, so we're going to have to do this again.
But this underscores the problem with discoverability on Apple services.
Well, discoverability, period, Jeff. I don't care which service you're on. There's just so much.
Yeah,
I have enough podcasts. It's a perfect amount of discoverability at this point, because I can't take any more in at this point. I have to, it's too many.
Well, I'm going to throw, and you might think that this is cheating because I said non-tech, but it really isn't tech. And that's Guy Kawasaki's Remarkable People. If you know Guy, you know that he was the evangelist for Apple in the early days. But the Remarkable People podcast is him talking to be smart about it, remarkable people. I mean, people like Jane Goodall, and I don't even want to mention anybody, because I use her because she's on the graphic for the podcast. But it's really fascinating. I mean, Guy digs in, but these are people they're business people, they are thinkers, they are all kind of they're sports people, and the way he approaches the interviews, he gets deep. He goes at them in different angles. He gets things out of them that I don't think that a lot of times they've ever said before. I have to admit, when I started subscribing to it, I looked at it and I'd see somebody come up and either I didn't know them or it's like, okay, I know them and I really don't care, but I'll start to listen anyway. And I was hooked.
The variety
I don't miss
of people he gets is astounding.
The variety, but the fact that he can generate, at least for me, interest that this is one podcast I never think I can skip this episode. I'll go to the next one. It's just amazing. And Guy is such a great interviewer. And of course, with his connections and his reputation, he can get a lot of doors open that none of us could ever get opened. And it's what is especially interesting to me as someone who does interviews is how many times his guests will say, nobody's ever asked me that before. Or, gee, that's a really good question. I've never thought about that way. Mm-hmm. And that to me is the sign of a great interviewer. So yeah, the Remarkable People podcast.
Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by our Patreon sponsors. Support Mac Voices at any level and gain access to the Mac Voices Slack, where you can interact with the Mac Voices live crew, participate in our discussions, and get your questions answered. You also get access to Mac Voices After Dark, the uncensored, unscripted, and always enjoyable discussions before and after the Mac Voices live show. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices, and thanks for supporting Mac Voices.
I want to give credit to a whole bunch of people here that have said things in the chat room because they're playing right along with us. And Barry, I'm going to apologize if I foul up your last name, but he says it's his wife's show, Story Power, with Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. I hope I've got that right. Bridget says Earhustle. Webb says You Just Have to Laugh, hosted by David Master. Brian F. says Gamet's picks are to die for. I think that was a really bad pun.
Only if you go in the woods.
Yeah. Let's see. Brian F. says Freakonomics, as well as some of its derivative spinoffs. That's one, Brian, that I have on my list. But yeah, Freakonomics is terrific. Brett says, I listen to Transit Unplugged. It's a bunch of public transit CEOs that talk about what they're doing to make the transit world better and the communities they serve. Very interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. Somebody in here named Darth Verso says, welcome to Nightvale as a bonus pick. Had to get that in.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yes. That gets my full endorsement.
It's so good and it's so weird. I want to make sure I'm managing people's expectations appropriately. This is a weird show. The
Nightvale.
Welcome to Nightvale. And it's the broadcast of the local radio station sharing, like the community access radio, sharing news and announcements and different updates about the community of Nightvale. And it's things like, do not look directly at the glowing cloud in the dog park. Etc. It's so good and it's so interesting and it's so weird. And before you know it, you are so invested in all of these people. And the voice of the guy who's like the main character of the, that does the bulk of the reading of the community announcements and all of this is really delightful to listen to. And the whole thing is just so awesome. Go sit down, listen to episode 1. And if it's your thing, you will know it is your thing. And if it is not your thing, it is absolutely not your thing. You will either enjoy it or you will bounce off it really hard. One of the two. It's fine with middle ground.
I can't imagine someone not loving it because in my reality, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Nice short episodes too, 23 minutes.
Yeah. It's brief, which is the other thing that's really nice about it. But yeah, I sort of fell into it. It was a nice yard work podcast a couple of summers ago. And so I would just go outside and just like basically binge. Like I would just keep listening to Welcome to Nightvale until I was done doing all the stuff in the yard. And it was great.
There's not a lot of fictional podcasts out there, are there? Most of them are just people.
There's like radio drama some sorts of things. But but yeah, mostly there's not. Finley Quality Radio is the one I can think of. Full disclosure, I have appeared on Finley Quality Radio a couple of times. It's Incomparable Radio Network. I'm going to get the name wrong, but the Incomparable has one, and it's done by David Lohr, and he occasionally lets me go be a voice of somebody on his show. So,
Paul says, this is tech adjacent, so we'll mention it. Focused with David Sparks and Mike Schmitz, and so those two.
Yeah,
I mean, how could
Good
you
one.
how could you not want to listen? So yeah, I mean, there's so many out there. You know, I admit when I put this together, I put together my list, and it's like, wow, there's so many I want to mention, and I'm not going to cheat. I'm going to save those for the next time. But thank you. There was one thing. I need to find this comment. Who said it? Yeah, Barry says almost all the podcasts in my feed have been from recommendations, and yeah, Barry, I'm right there with you. Certainly, I would say that 90% of my non-tech podcasts have been from recommendations. Sometimes just from another podcast saying, "Hey, we really like this." So there's so many great things out there that you really need to spread your wings a little bit.
I looked it up, and the official name is Incomparable Radio Theater, and you can find it at theincomparable.com/radio for people who are interested.
Excellent.
And it's radio drama stuff that's there, and it's great, and it's very fun, and you should listen to all the episodes. I'm not saying that because I have been on it a few times. I'm just saying that because I think it's delightful and it's really fun to listen to. So there you go.
Nice. Guys, we're at time. Let's go around the room, let folks know where they can find you. Thank you for throwing all of your links into the show notes, folks. I will have all these podcasts linked up there so you can go and check them out for yourselves, because I know they've just added a few more to mine. I hope they've added some to yours. So I'm going to reverse it to wrap us up. So Kelly, I'm going to let you go out first. Where can folks find you?
You can find me over at theslice.net, which you can still find me at theslice.tech, but I was finally able to get my filthy mitts on theslice.net, and so now it's mine. Mwahaha! So you can find me at theslice.net. I'm working on getting everything up and running, so there's not much over there now, but I have a good interview that's about to drop as soon as I can carve out an hour to sit and shove it out the door. You can find me on the after show at aftershowpodcast.com with Mike Rose. You can occasionally find me creating similar chaos to what I do here on MacVoices Live over at the Incomparable. You can also find me on the show that we are gearing back up to start broadcasting again, which is I Want My MCU TV, because Moon Knight drops in a week and we're going to start doing things then. And you can also find me, I don't even know if I've listed a replace or not, but the rest of the time you can find me on Twitter as Verso.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. That's great. Hang on, I just lost my Zoom. Jim Ray. Jim, thank you for being here and sharing your cycling enthusiasm. Where can folks find you?
Oh, I just barely shared my cycling enthusiasm.
Took a lot of ball.
What's that?
Nothing.
Get out.
Don't listen to Warren.
Get
Jim.
out.
Don't get distracted.
Warren,
Yes.
do you want to have to go wait in the car again?
Yeah.
Stay on
Need
focus.
intervention.
people. Get back on focus.
Stay on target.
Stay on target.
Stay on target.
It really, with the Zoom windows, I kind of feel like I'm flying the X-wing.
Jim, where can we find
I
you?
subscribe to 3 streaming services to watch cycling.
Wow,
Okay.
that's dedication.
That's impressive.
That's
Dang.
dedication.
Anyway,
That's
if I'm not watching a bicycling race, you can find me at provue.com, PROVUE. And I might even be there watching a bicycling race here on my iPad next to me while I'm coding. And also on Twitter, at ProViewJim on Twitter.
Great. Thanks for being here, Jim. Jeff Gamet, I know that there's at least one new place they can find you, new in the last few weeks, but what all would you like to direct folks to?
How about Jay Gamet on Twitter and Instagram, youtube.com/JGamet for my videos. The new thing you're referencing would be contextmachine.io. Brian Chaffin and I have teamed up to I guess, breathed new life into Apple Context Machine. It is now the Context Machine, and it is ours, and completely separate now from the control of Mac Observer, which means we can do anything we want and no one can stop us. Anyhow, so far we've been packing an hour's worth of content into what's supposed to be a half-hour show, and which means that we cannot stop talking. So they're all more than 30 minutes long. And the website is under construction. So if you show up at the website and you're like, seriously, they couldn't put more effort into it? The answer today is no, we couldn't. But it's a work in progress. So we're getting everything set up, and eventually all the podcasts will list there, and we're having a lot of fun with it.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for being here. Warren Sklar, where can you be found when your wife's not home? I'm afraid to ask.
At home.
Oh, first I'll be having dinner at Guy's restaurant, whatever he's cooking for me at Guy Fieri's. And then I'm going to head over to Jim's house and watch some cycling.
Good plan.
Yeah. Jim says it's news to me.
The season has started.
I would watch cycling. I saw the race in London. It was when I was there. Anyways, it's fun. When the wife's traveling, I get to podcast. So you'll be so sick of me by like next week. You'll be like calling my wife.
When does your wife get back?
You'll be calling my wife saying, "Don't leave him. Don't leave this guy alone again because he's just an idiot." And, don't let it happen. Friends don't let it happen. So this show and David's show on Thursday. In Touch with iOS.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I think.
I don't know. I missed half that. I think you probably cursed me out and
well, just with our minds.
Well,
yeah, it's
Jeff
not
Butts.
After dark yet.
He was censoring himself.
Oh, it's definitely
Just wait.
Yeah, Jeff Butts, thank you for being here and sharing things, and for taking time off as the new managing editor of the Mac Observer. I assume that's one of the places folks can find you.
Yeah, they can find me there. I am at Clefmeister on the Twitterverse, and I am at Recovering Phoenix 72 on Instagram.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
David Ginsburg, thank you for thanks to you and Jeff both for backing me up tonight, and for taking the reins in the next 2 weeks. Where can folks find you?
Yes, you can find me here as interim host for the next couple of weeks with Jeff. You can find me at In Touch with iOS, intouchwithios.com. You find me on my Twitter channel, youtube.com/DaveG65. The Mac Show on Fridays on the British Tech Network, and on Twitter at DaveG65.
Excellent. Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Last but absolutely not least, Mr. Guy Serle. Guy, where
Hey.
can folks find you?
Well, let's see. Vert Shark over on YouTube, where all the odds on the vids will be. VertShark.com is the website. The MyMac.com podcast I've been doing for over 11 years now with Gazmaz every single weekend. Guy's Daily Drive, where 2 to 3 times a week I just talk crazy nonsense into my car while I'm going to work. Let's see. Twitter
The special
would be,
bit there is that he broadcasts the crazy nonsense as opposed to the rest of the time.
Yeah. It's live streamed. It's if I get into an automobile accident, and it almost happened once, it's going to happen right there. So, yeah, usually Mondays and Fridays, though I have been doing them now on Wednesdays as well, every once in a while. And Mac Parrot and Vert Shark over on the Twitters.
Excellent. Thank you, Guy. Thank you. Thank you to the chat room. A lot of great comments tonight, a lot of people throwing things in, their podcast picks and comments on what we were commenting on. It's always great to have you guys. Really, really appreciate you showing up here every Tuesday. Next 2 weeks, as I said, I won't be around. David and Jeff Gamet will be the interim hosts. Please.
You
treat
mean
them-
underpants?
Well, whatever.
David Ginsburg and underpants will be hosting the show.
Treat
So
them better
we
than
have
you treat
moved
me.
on from Jeff Prime. Clearly.
Oh, man. All right. That's it. We're out of here.
That's what they're
folks,
gonna name
this
the
is
show,
Mac
Chuck.
Voices. Down. What?
When you're gone, they're going to name it Jeff Underpants and the David Show. For
It
the next
wouldn't
2 weeks.
surprise me even a little bit. Folks, this is Mac Voices Live, Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and on youtube.com/Mac Voices TV. That's where you'll find us. And if we set everything up, that's where you'll find Jeff and David for the next 2 weeks. I'll be back after that, and we're just going to keep on going. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.